Hey guys, what is up? It's Dusty here and welcome back to another crypto video. And today I will not hold you guys long, but we just got ourselves another very nice update in the Ripple versus SEC lawsuit, as a very important party has just shared some additional support for Ripple in this case, or more importantly, for the XRP community. And it was a long time coming. We were very confused about the situation, but now finally it is cleared up, and I personally think this is extremely nice news. Now guys, if you're enjoying these daily crypto videos, or you just want to support me, or you're excited about XRP, whatever, make sure you press that like button and let's get right into it. So to cover the situation, we have to take a look at this tweet right here. It came from the Blockchain Association, which again is the unified voice of the crypto industry. The industry is hiring, okay? Well, that's all cool, that's all cool. They've said something interesting about the Ripple versus SEC case. I'm not that fat, by the way. I'm not sure why the chair is doing that. But today, we announced we filed an amicus brief supporting a correct interpretation of Howey in the SEC's 2-year legal battle against Ripple. A judge now has the opportunity to issue a substantive opinion on how Howey applies to digital assets. Here's what's at stake. Now, for years now, the SEC has chosen to target crypto through a regulation by enforcement pattern. Rather than working towards joint solutions with industry members, they've instead sought to punish crypto companies with foggy and haphazard justifications. Now, in December of 2020, the SEC did just that to Ripple, suing the company for trading a digital currency without registering the token as a security, despite the SEC's lack of guidance on the issue. And the important thing here comes to that. It is not that Ripple necessarily... Wait, let me actually take a step back. The most important thing right there being the SEC's lack of guidance on the issue. You can't really say Ripple did something wrong, albeit that you now think so, whatever. If you didn't let them know that they did something wrong, or if they, most importantly, couldn't have known. And the SEC is trying to argue and say, well, but it's in Howey, you know? We didn't have to place any rules out there because you should have known following these 70-year-old rules. And, well, Ripple's saying, no, that doesn't make a lot of sense because we think that these rules work differently for crypto, and the SEC seems to say, no. Now, there's another issue at hand, by the way, which I just want to quickly mention here. The SEC and CFTC are having a very big battle about Ethereum right now, all the while this is going on. I wanted to say that at the start of the video, but I forgot. Let me know down below, actually. Are you a XRP fan? Just let me know down below. And let's move on with the matter. Since 2019, the SEC has regulated how US security laws apply to digital assets through enforcement actions rather than guidance or rulemaking. Often, SEC enforcement actions end in a one-sided settlement agreements rather than judicial opinions that factor in the unique facts presented to the court by both sides. Now, rather than settle, Ripple is fighting back through our judicial system. What this means is that a judge will soon rule on the issue. Should the court adopt the SEC's version of the law, the landscape of assets falling under the SEC's jurisdiction will expand beyond how the Supreme Court intended in Howey. Now, we joined the fight with an amicus brief today to support our growing crypto ecosystem. No regulatory agency should unilaterally regulate crypto with outdated standards. Instead, it's time for Congress to define a clear regulatory framework to guide the industry. Finally, Finally, the Blockchain Association, and I guess guys of the sort, are showcasing some actual support for Ripple/XRP. Finally. It has taken so long for some of these players to come out and explain their story, or more importantly, explain that what the SEC is doing is wrong and should be fought. But then we look at Coinbase, whom said, oh, I'm Coinbase. Now we want to make sure crypto is all unified. Stop the tribalism. And then they're like, well, but XRP, go screw yourself. It's like strange to me. It's also kind of hypocritical of them saying like, oh, Ripple has been fighting this battle for so long. Poor them. When again, this support was long overdue. But can't look a gifted horse in the mouth, if that's also an English saying. I don't know. I know it's a Dutch one, that's for sure. If it's not an English saying, it's basically, well, we got something at least. So let's not look back at all the negative stuff that happened before. Let's look at what we have now. And that is pretty good. So I guess all I can say is nice. They're joining the fight, and they're basically trying to put on the map that this is wrong. And now is getting some coverage over on places like CoinDesk as well. The Blockchain Association asked a court for permission to file a friend of the court brief in the SEC's case against Ripple, arguing that the SEC's interpretation of how tokens are traded may have a negative impact on the broader industry. And so I'm hoping that from here on forward, other players will look at this. We also have Jake Chervinsky saying, I'm proud to announce that Blockchain Association has filed the amicus brief. And what we know, just what we read just now, this one got a little bit more likes. In short, the SEC is wrong on the law, and its pattern of regulation by enforcement is harmful to both U.S. companies, crypto companies, and the investors that it's meant to protect. From our introduction and summary of argument, quote, SEC Chair Gary Gensler recently opined, without significant explanation, that the vast majority of tokens are securities. Put simply, that view should not be and cannot be the law. So they're basically asserting that the SEC is misinterpreting the law, specifically Gary Gensler. For years, the SEC has refused to provide guidance on the definition of an investment contract. Instead, the SEC pretends the law is clear, quoting back to laws from 70 years ago, and then pronounces its views for the first time in actions like this one. That's regulation by enforcement, which is, allowed, but not the way that you want to govern. Yet again, the SEC has expressed its views on crypto to a federal court in a motion for summary judgment, rather than to the American people in guidance or rulemaking, which is pretty odd. The SEC's views are wrong as a matter of law and policy, and our brief explains why, and here are the highlights. As we just covered, the fatal flaw in the SEC's position is its failure to distinguish primary sales from downstream transactions in the secondary market. The SEC ignores the difference between promises that go along with a token sale, like maybe a security, and the token itself, which can never be a security. As a result, the SEC doesn't seem to even bother analyzing whether secondary sales of XRP qualify as securities transactions, despite alleging violations through present day. Instead, SEC apparently takes the position, once a security, always a security, no matter what, which is why there's such a big debacle about Ethereum now. And the distinction between primary and secondary sales is critical. The SEC's allegations about the secondary market led U.S. trading platforms to delist XRP all the way back in 2020 December, causing a dramatic price crash and hurting the same XRP holders whom the SEC is supposed to protect. Now, the SEC's failure to distinguish primary and secondary sales contradicts its own guidelines. In June of 2018, Mr. Hinman acknowledged that even if a token is sold via an investment contract, it can be reevaluated on later sales. The SEC said so again in its April 2019 framework. I know Director Hinman has come to play a controversial role in the dispute, but I believe his statements on the law on Howey was correct. That means the SEC carries the burden of proving not only that XRP was a security in the past, but still is right now. And they didn't even try. The SEC instead relies on an extremely broad view of Howey, far above what the law actually supports. And the SEC takes a test meant to define a specific type of relationship between transacting parties and reimagines it to capture basically everything in terms of the crypto asset space with a market price, seemingly to justify expanding its own authority over crypto as much as possible. And the SEC stretches all four prongs of Howey beyond the limits of logic and legal precedent. And first, I'm not sure why I'm saying we. I'm not sure what happened right there. First, the SEC says there can, and what's going on? First, the SEC says there can be an investment of money, even if nobody actually invests any money. Makes no sense. And the SEC seems to think even assets given away for free involve an investment of money because of some intangible expectation that the recipient will contribute value back. Now, that can't be law or anything else. Or else anything and everything will satisfy this prong, making it pointless, because, it's going to be overcoupling everything, right? It makes no sense. And the Supreme Court's language in Howey should be taken literally. An investment contract requires an actual investment of tangible consideration. The test is meant to apply to sales involving issuers who seek the use of the money of others, not all later sales for all time. And second, the SEC says there can be a common enterprise, even if there's no enterprise. The SEC says horizontal commonality exists because the price of all units of XRP rises or falls equally. Again, this renders the point of the prong useless, satisfied by every fungible asset ever. It defies logic to say all holders of a fungible asset are a common enterprise. Bitcoin, gold, Yeezys. Case law establishes a much more narrow definition of common enterprise, requiring a pooling of assets and pro rata distribution of profits as in an actual business. Third, the SEC says there can be an expectation of profit even if the secondary market purchasers don't expect profit. The record shows a number of holders who obtain XRP for reasons other than profit, but the SEC just diminishes them or dismisses them as if they're not relevant, which is actually a really beautiful point. You can't actually just get XRP because of some use that literally renders this point obsolete. I think they are. And fourth, the SEC says there can be reliance on the efforts of others, no matter who Guys, I'm not so sure what's happening to my reading here. Maybe it's my hunger. I have my food laying down, but I'm like, no, let me create a video real quick for the people, Or maybe it's because I usually now edit so much and I try to do everything in one take now. Maybe that's also why. Could be. The record shows a number of holders who obtained XRP for reasons other than profit, as we just said, just quickly reminding myself, but the SEC just dismisses them as if they're not relevant. They are. And fourth, the SEC says there can be reliance on the efforts of others, no matter why buyers decide to obtain an asset, and even for buyers with no legal rights related to those others. If I've learned anything from XRP holders, it's that they're big and diverse group. And just like any other group of people who own a fungible asset, it's unfair to assume they all think exactly alike and act alike as well. It's unfair even here on Twitter, let alone in a federal enforcement action. But that's exactly what the SEC does in its summary judgment briefing. Our brief also addresses the SEC's faulty arguments on fair notice, the SEC's assertions that market participants are on fair notice of how tokens are treated under the security laws, ring hollow when the market lacks clarity on even the most basic of points. And we address extraterritoriality, including the SEC's view that it has jurisdiction based solely on US-based nodes. Quote, incidental contact with the United States is insufficient to render a foreign transaction predominantly domestic. The same rules should apply to nodes as well, end quote. I wish the SEC would take more sensible positions on crypto, but until then, there's sadly no choice but to fight this out in the courts. This case could result in important precedent affecting the whole industry. I hope our brief helps the court get the law right. Yeah, beautiful. I don't know what else to tell you. Beautiful.